I really couldn't work, like I said, without this particular system. And it's just been exciting now because they're more. I love the fact that we have kind of third parties now coming in and expanding the tool set. And I like the fact that they've been expanding the tool set. I haven't heard some of the newer like effects things that they've come. I've read about them. I've got newsletters about them, but I'm interested in hearing those things. So it's I think from my point of view, as someone who always was a hardware processor, it's just the fact that the processing is getting so good and the development's getting so good, the code's being written so well with the signal processing now. It's kind of undeniable that some of it sounds, because there were many years a lot of mastering guys, we would turn our noses up at doing anything that way, doing signal processing that way, but it's just much better. And you have, the rule is just keep listening. You have to always listen. And you think, oh, I've heard those. No, you really haven't. You have to listen to the updates and
things change. And
things have really changed a lot. I mean, it's really impressive.
I remember some of the first EQ plugins that I got back in the late 90s where it was just hard sounding, very hard. And the EQs that are coming out now, it's just sweet. They're just great.
Yeah, it's come a long way. And that's the thing. Like now, you're kind of like, I want to hear it all. And that there's hundreds of these, plugins and programs and items that we can check out, and there's not enough time in the day to listen to them all.
Right. Tell me about it.
I just thought of another. And the Sonox stuff is another piece that I have on here to for signal processing, and it's all used sparingly, and it's about choice.
Yes.
I think that if there's anything I'm trying to say about like what this allows me to do is it lets me have a wide sonic palette, and it's a real essential part of mastering. You can have this favorite EQ and this favorite compressor, but you have to have choices because not all the music's the same, not all the people you work with are the same, and so good gear is always good gear, but there is some subjectivity to why you choose this or that or what have you, and that's been helpful to me that now. I actually do have some choices. And I used to have them only in the hardware domain. Now I've got all these choices in the software domain.
Exactly.
And it's more choices, but it's good because it's good for creativity.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. So in mastering, when on either Samplitude or Sequoia, for end users of this program, when they're at their own home studio, working on their own material, what advice do you have that where should they go after? What should they be looking at when they're mastering their own project?
Right. Well, let's see. There's a couple things. Like something that I tell people, like if they're sending me a project to master and they can apply this to their own thing, is when you're mixing, when you're setting up your mixes, don't feel the need to cream your files at that point with tons and tons of level. Because you can always adjust the level upward in the mastering phase, and that's probably part of the mastering phase. So if you can get your mixes comfortable and with some headroom, I think that's a good place to start. I think start with it because I'm going to presume if you're mastering yourself, you're mixing yourself too. And then as far as how to approach your mastering, one thing I try, it's one of my things I preach to people is you have to become a good critical listener. And what that means is you really have to listen to a lot of recordings outside of your comfort zone. And kind of learn where this median place is where they fall. That's what we're trying to do all the time in the mastering room. Is we're trying to take your recording, which is unique and special, and say, okay, now let's make this its own unique thing, but that it has a sonic signature that has continuity with other things in this genre. I think that's a really important element. And so, if you're working alone, sometimes you can lose your perspective on that because you're very glued to your mix and your sounding, and you start to love it and all that kind of stuff. And you do have to. That's one of the things about using professional mastering is that you're getting an objective opinion. That happens all the time where people will come in and say, "Oh, I just don't think this record's any good," and I'll put up and be like, oh, "It's amazing. You've been on it too long. You've lost your judgment because you're too close to this record, and it's fantastic." And see, part of the job is like assuring them that what they've done is really good work. So that's again a perspective thing. I think that if you're working by yourself, walk away from it, come back, compare it to other recordings. This is a discussion I have with young folks all the time, which is they'll say, I was recommended these 10 recordings, and I don't really think they're very good. And I'll always say, well, do you not like the music? Because if you don't like the music, that's fine. But if you don't think they're very good and you're 18 and you've only listened to a few things, well, I think you need to learn a little bit more, to determine what is a good, and how many orchestras have you listened to, or how many good concerts have you been to, or ear training is a really important part of this job, and it's something that you develop over time. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that even though we have an industry where we have golden ears and whatnot, that people who are golden ears, being a good critical listener is a learned skill.
Yes.
And so that's what I would encourage people to do who are pursuing this, is to really work on that. And a cool thing you can do with your workstation is, one thing I like to do is put a bunch of sound files up in a VIP and flick through them and compare them, and don't get too hung up on what the wave looks like. That's a real popular thing people do. They're like, oh look, this one's square, this one's not. Don't get too hung up on that, because you don't want to learn how to listen through your eyes. You want to learn how to listen with your ears. But use the tool, use the comparative tool that you have here. This is a really unique thing. It used to be you could only listen to a piece of vinyl, you take it off and listen to another one, take it off and listen. That was very cumbersome. Then CDs were a little bit better. But now I can load up 10 files and open 10 tracks and flip through them, and I'll do that because it's a really interesting way to listen, or line them up like this and jump around. And again, it's a great listening tool, way to learn how to become a better listener.
Awesome.
Yeah, so those are just some little things, but I really encourage new users to work on that. You gotta use the technology to train their ear as much as you can, because it's an amazing piece of technology, and so you have to use the tools to help you do your job.
Yep. George Massingberg said, I pay a lot of money to my mastering engineer to let me know that my mix is correct.
Yes.
And I think that's what it boils down to.
That's true. It's a relationship. I mean, you do go to the guy you go to, or the gal, because you trust them, and you trust them to tell you, what, this isn't quite right, and they're not hurt their feelings. Their feelings will be hurt, or you trust them when you're really insecure about it, and you're saying, no, it's fine. I'm telling you, it's fine, and that happens more. It's more that than the other. It's more you assuring the person you're working with that it's really good. The record they did is really, really sounds good. And so that's why we try to carefully work in these, environments that, where we can really hear, essentially, which, like a sonic microscope, we're trying to hear every detail, but that's because we want to make sure that everything is just so. And also, it's our reference point. It's why mastering engineers don't go from room to room.
Right.
The room is a part of their, part of them, and it's because they listen to hundreds of recordings in it.
Exactly.
They're so familiar. They can tell. They can tell right away when you bring in a new album. They'll say, well, how do they know? They haven't even heard this album. They know within a few bars where it sits. Again, in terms of that sense of continuity, like if it's a rock album where it sits with all the other rock albums, or if it's a country album where it sits with all those, or if it's a dance thing or what have you, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we all kind of have specialities, but you're constantly comparing back. That's why I kind of harp on the comparative listening thing, which again is what this lets you do, with a click of a mouse.
Yes.
You can compare an infinite amount of permutations of a song, a mix, to determine what's best for the song, what's the best sounding song, or best sounding mix, or what have you. So
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for coming.